Hello and welcome back, potential home relocators slash buyers. The fact of the matter is, over the last couple of years, Florida's housing market has been cooling off, which is a really interesting time, I think, if you're especially looking for some sort of potential long-term growth opportunity. Since 2019, we're talking 60+% just in a 3-4 year span of price increases. Inventory is up 20%. Home sellers are slashing prices left and right. Builders are adding incentives. The tides have been turning and it's getting more aggressive every single month, it feels like, that continues across the state. So if you are someone that's been looking for an investment, you're someone that's been looking in Florida as a potential dream to move there or anywhere in between, this could be an interesting moment. So the last couple of weeks, I have scoured the depths of the numbers I can find, the trends. My list of 15 to 20 potential things that are interesting, I've narrowed down to 5 to talk to you about today, where I think affordability meets growth. So I really hope you enjoy the take. If we have not met, my name is Adam Hancock. This is the Florida Relocation Guide, your smartest way to buy, sell, and or invest across all of Southwest Florida. If you do this video, I have a couple of free resources that I will talk about in just a minute, but I'd like to just hop right in. So without further ado, let's hop in. All right, number 1 on my list, in no particular order, we're talking about St. Petersburg, Florida, which is based in the Tampa Bay greater metro. So first off, my main premise here is a 3-headed monster of long-term value. Number 1 is, if you take what most people love about relocating to the state of Florida, it's what those kind of quintessential beach towns offer. Not just the quaint ones, but like Sarasota, Naples, Vero Beach, parts of Boca Raton. It's these areas that offer that perfect Florida lifestyle, and they're much more based on the end of a work career, not the beginning or the middle of it. And people do love that, but it lacks the economics in the industry that would come with a big city, and that's always a juxtaposition people are trying to figure out. Now, if you take all of that and you drop it in Tampa Bay, which is St. Petersburg, then basically you have access to the big city stuff. You don't have to be stuck in it all the time, which is an interesting thing if you had to say, I'm only picking one spot. I'd rather have both personally. Second, I think for having that combination, it's in the best possible geography in the entire state if you had to pick one, and you were comparing if you had to go to a different location with that same value. The Southwest Gulf Coast part of the state is where I would ideally choose when it comes to, it's tough to say with shades of gray here, but when it comes to overall weather, history, the types of water, the types of beaches, and the general access, it's my personal preference. And number 3, I think the variety about St. Pete, more notably, is like more of a niche opinion, is really unique, right? People come there, the downtown St. Pete's on the bay side. Then you have the beaches, and you have a bunch of different ones, right? You have Paso Grill and Clearwater and Treasure Island and Reddington and Madeira. And some people like Indian Rock, some people like others. The middle's random. South is a little bit up and coming with Coquina. You go north, you have Dunedin Safety Harbor. All that to say, people usually have a different opinion from each other. It's not a consensus. When there's not a consensus, prices will be cheaper because not everyone's going to one place and competing, and it's not like hands down slam dunk like parts of Sarasota and parts of Naples, which is going to provide every person, every man, every woman a lot more opportunity. That's first. Second, when it comes to pricing, St. Pete really sits, honestly, like there's a lot of different sources that say a lot of different numbers, but it sits where Florida sits as a whole. But that's everything included. That's the super cheap parts of Florida, that's expensive. But when it comes to median, it sits in that low 4s range, honestly, if you like the average house. That's the median cost. Now, what's interesting about that is no one's looking at St. Pete in a vacuum. That low 4s median cost of St. Pete is roughly $100,000 to $150,000 cheaper than the median in Sarasota. The median in Lakeland Ranch is $600 something, and in Naples even more expensive than that. So you get $250,000 on average savings of St. Pete versus Naples. So I think it's a perspective affordability that I'm interested in there. Listings are up, like all the stuff I mentioned in the beginning, which is also going to put each situation different from the other. There's more chances of getting a deal. Lastly, as I digress, that I like about St. Pete, analysts are saying even prices shot up and there's another possible dip, even like a 10% potential dip. St. Pete's poised for 5% annual gains long term, thanks to the unique eclectic nature of it and where it's based, but also the urban renewal that's currently happening. All right, number 2 on my list is a place that I've been really high on the last few months especially, and that is called Port St. Lucie, Florida. My hedge here is that when people traditionally, in my experience, have gone to the Atlantic coast, not the Gulf Coast of the state. One, it's very long, so there's a lot of different options, but you saw a lot of French Canadians back in the day go there, and then generationally everybody's moving there over and over. Gulf Coast started to come into favor a little bit. A lot of Northeast, New York, Boston, New Jersey. That was a really heavy populace down the right above Fort Lauderdale area. When you get what's at my disposal there, you have peacocks, right? North and south. So you have Miami, you have Fort Lauderdale, all of that. That's like not the average place. You go north, you have the same, right? You get way up in the state, 4.5 hours away from anything really meaningful, almost in Georgia. And you get like Jacksonville, St. Augustine, Amelia Island, lovely place, but it's still a real big decision because you're going that far and doing all of that. In the middle is where a lot of people end up. So they go to Melbourne, they go to Vero Beach, Delray Beach. They're going in the, I don't really want to be in Miami, I can't go up that far. They're going central. And what those places have offered is a big cost reduction versus the Southwest Gulf Coast especially. If you don't want to go all the way to the Panhandle, they offered relative central proximity, so you didn't commit to something where you're like, I can't really access the rest of the state. But what came with that was a severe lack of new construction, niche beach towns, a little river, a little Atlantic, and it was like you had to pick your poison a little bit, but you suffered something, right? A lot of these places are not trying to build up at all. They're not trying to do a bunch of new stuff. They're very controlled by these little small government-based beach towns. And I feel that over the long term, the darling of this area is going to be Port St. Lucie, because what it does is it bridges that gap. It gives you both. You have which it still surprises me, but you have one of the top 10 most populous areas in the entire state of Florida, which I don't know how many people I've talked to that were like, oh yeah, that was my first thought was Port St. Lucie is on that list. So what comes with that is new construction, good schools, heavy net migration, hospitals. It comes with infrastructure that a place like that needs, but at the same time, it still offers that Atlantic coastal beach life. You have bays and you have Atlantic waters out in the open there with fishing and boating and water life. You have golf and all of this to boot. The kicker is comes with a median cost in 2025 under $400,000. Half of the homes are under $400,000. So if you're looking at like a place that it does feel like there's so much variety, you don't know where to plant your flag, and you had to pick one that might persevere over the long term, I'm picking the place that's in the middle with access to everything, that has enough going for it from an urban development standpoint that could have staying power if it came down to one decision. Hey guys, I wanted to hop in and interrupt the video for just a second to talk about the free resources I mentioned at the beginning. Two things I want to put on your radar. One is I just created a brand new best places across the state of Florida guide. What this does is it goes categorical and it goes to what I think a list of 8 cover the entire state. It'd be hard to say that more than 8 in each category are compelling if you're really juxtaposing areas. So it'll go across the entire state of Florida, Panhandle, Atlantic Coast, North, South, the whole thing. And it goes retirees, family first, friendly centric, education, that kind of thing, work/young professional, not mutually exclusive, and more affordable in perspective terms, lists of 8 that I really like. And like I said, I think are comprehensive, and some other things in there. That's one great thing to do. The URL is going to be here the whole time I'm speaking. The second thing is 30-day email. I send one email every 30 days, no spam. It's mostly Southwest Florida Gulf Coast plus housing market adjacent content. And it's just bullet point, no frills email. That is everything I'm working on in real time that I share on the last day of every single month. So I wanted to mention those 2 items. Please check them out if you deem that a good fit for you, and let's move on. All right, number 3 on my list is Ocala, Florida. So there's a couple things I like right now in 2025. One is just this is a pure cost play in a lot of ways. It's not everything, but it's a lot of it. So we have $284,000 median cost right now in March 2025. That's versus the $408K I mentioned earlier in the video about across the board Florida, and a lot of the markets people are really moving to are higher than that. So that's a big divide in percentage versus what else you can get in most places, which is going to come into play again here in a second. The second big reason is style. More times than not, people are choosing Ocala. Obviously price always is going to play into this one, but they're choosing Ocala because it's not the prototypical thing. Ocala is an inland, old school Florida feel through and through. It's equestrian horse country. And you have a mix, like a lot of these areas do, of these huge, beautiful manors that people have had generationally. They're absolutely beautiful, stunning, cost a lot of money. And then you have everybody else for the most part. But it's docile, it is peaceful, it is an old vibe. That is very different than what you're going to find in a Sarasota or a Venice or a Naples, Tampa Bay especially, Orlando that's adjacent. So whether you have ties like with family in the Gainesville area or you want to be near Orlando, not on top of it or whatever it may be, Ocala is not going to be the villages. On top of the world is not going to be the villages. They might have master plan pieces. It's not going to be Pleasantville in an inland Florida location. So I think that's at least 50% of the conversation beyond price. And then if you just take, circling back to the price as we digress here one more time, these prices are probably not going to go from $284,000 to $500,000 across the board just because they're already cheap. but it's a lot easier for something a little bit cheaper to rise in a lot of markets. So if you're just saying that 5% appreciation, you want to be like, I'm not trying to make all the money in the world, but I want to get in a place that I know is safe because it's not going to go the other way, then this would be tough to argue that, I think, as well. So that's number 3. Okay, on to number 4 on our list, and that is Lakeland, Florida. This is another one that falls in the in-betweener category, but I think a little bit more on steroids than Ocala conversation. So think of a in-between powerhouse between Tampa and Orlando. That's where this falls in all the conversations. It's not right on top of any of them. It's not as close or as robust as each of those individual areas are, but it's between them. And so it gets all the benefits in the price decrease of sitting in a median around $324K versus $408. Neither Orlando or Tampa has median costs under $400,000. It is a lot more docile because you're not in the thick of either one of these large cities. And then at some point, for lack of better words, it got cooler. I don't know what happened. I never viewed Polk County as a cool place to be when I was growing up, or Haines City or any of these, but I went to school for a short period of time when I was playing baseball at a school called Southeastern, and they have another really good school, blanking on the name, private school across the lake from that as well, and a couple other schools floating around. But they got a culture. So then you start seeing like Amazon warehouse goes over there. Last time I went back, there was like 3 startup business incubators. A lot of the kids in those like bunch of those college towns that they were there for the different college reasons from different parts of the state ended up staying there and started building a thing, just like we saw in Estero, like the North Fort Myers kind of area where Florida Gulf Coast wasn't in existence. I think I went to a baseball camp there when I was in high school. I think that was around the time it was built, 2003, 2004, something like that. But then all those kids come down to this great school, and then a lot don't leave, and they end up starting things and starting families and all this kind of thing. Lakeland falls in that much more than I've seen even in the Ocalas of the world. So whether you have a young family or you're looking for a little bit of a cheaper, a slower environment versus some of the surrounding cities, but also still being in an area I would consider southwest Gulf Coast of the state, I like all of that. They're up 2.8%, just to throw some stats at you, 2.8% in population. I mentioned the Amazon, there's healthcare, there's tech, there's minor league baseball. Prices were up 2.5% last year, so this could be a place that 324 goes to 4. And this could be a place that new construction becomes in vogue. So for out-of-state folks, I think at least exploring that conversation before you go to completely other coasts within the state, I think would be wise. Okay, my 5th and final one I wanted to share with you guys for this particular list is called the Palm Coast. So this is basically Flagler County, part of the state of Florida in the Northeast District. Right off the bat, I think this is the area that is the biggest juxtaposition from my experience versus the Southwest Gulf Coast. The prototypical like Sarasota adjacent mainly competes on paper in a lot of people's minds with the St. Augustine adjacent area. They're very similar in a lot of ways. They offer that old Florida kind of coast that people really dream of moving their whole life, but then also for a very long time they've competed. I think they're number 2 and 3 now, but that's very recent because Central Florida has taken the number 1 spot for school districts, but they were number 1 and number 2 public school districts in the entire state. So you have what people think of a dream retirement destination with the number 1 or the number 2 public school district, which then begets a multi-generational environment, which brought new construction. So you had just a really nice combination of things that really everybody wants. And they would win out in a lot of respects because of that. At the same time, they are in very different parts of the state. They're 4+ hours away from each other. One is much more on in the northeastern part it feels like a northeastern kind of beach. It feels more historic. It's different. St. Augustine sits very close to Jacksonville, which is way bigger than like a Tampa Bay. So you have a small city that sits next to a big one, and then you have the Sarasota area. It's like prototypical over time, like what pictures look like. It's different. So because of those 2 facts, it is actually an easier decision for people because that geography difference and all that, it's binary, right? When people look at both, they're usually like, I have a favorite. It's not like they're so compelled to choose between both. What the Palm Coast gives you, with all of that being said, which is much too wordy, is it's another in between. A lot of where I find value is perspective value. It's that I don't want to get it weird. You don't want cheap for cheap's sake. If you actually said the cheapest actual places to live in Florida, you could find those. But what you really want, or what most people want, is they want the cheapest versions of the best places to live in Florida. The Palm Coast gives you, it's not Daytona, it's not St. Augustine, it's in between. It's going to offer a lot of what those offer. It's going to give you access up and down, but because of where it's based, it's going to cost you $350,000, not 450 to 500, because it's not perfect, because it's not where everybody seeks, it's next to it. It's not going to have a population that grows as fast as the others until you've already made your decision, which you can take advantage of the appreciation. You can ride that wave where most of the money is made, but it's never going to be those other locations at the same time. So while it won't go from 400,000 to $1 million necessarily, it has a chance to rise because it's very close to those places, but it still will be affordable while it is doing that. So all that to say, that'd be a lot of opportunity for an investor. That'd be a lot of opportunity for a family that can be like, okay, we could go here and then discover more about Florida, see where we'd like to actually be, which is much easier when you're here day to day. So that'd be my 2 cents on the Palm Coast, if that made sense. And give me just a second, we'll wrap up. All right, my friends, that is a wrap for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it on the Florida Relocation Guide. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'm gonna try to release most Sundays and Wednesdays, 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central for the balance of 2025. A lot of really good content about the housing market, about Sarasota, Tampa Bay, Naples, greater neighborhoods, and everything in between. That's the best way to see what's coming next, is simply subscribing. If any of those free guides perked you up, I'm gonna put some URLs on the screen here. We have a best places list. We have a Sarasota, Florida relocation, Lakewood Ranch, Bradenton. Those would be some really nice additives. They just take any broad content or a small list into a bigger one. They take a list of 5 into 10. They go across the state if you're comparing multiple areas. And it's just a real quick kind of value exchange. It's a flip book and a downloadable PDF. One of the best things you can do on the back of this, if you are interested in, especially the Southwest Gulf Coast Florida area mainly, I have a 30-day email I send out. I'll put that URL here as well. I figure you could take a picture of it, you could write it down and backtrack your way there so you don't have to navigate the website. I send one email every 30 days, no spam at all. And it's no pictures, nothing, just a manifesto bullet points on a 30-day cycle where I talk about it's basically knowing things early and often. So everything we're working on, but I'm trying to get you in the know to get an advantage as fast as possible. Incentives, new neighborhoods and condominiums being built that are just at the press release level. Anything that we think is interesting, that's a really nice thing to do regardless of how much you value like a PDF relocation guide. And of course, low-hanging fruit-wise, I operate a full-scale residential real estate team. So if anything about this video resonated with you, and you're looking at potentially moving down, buying new construction, anywhere in between, we would love to assist if you think it would be valuable to you. Amazing team, buying, selling. It's not exclusive to any area. It's buying, selling, it's investing. We're heavy on the economic side for sure. Please consider reaching out. You can call, text, email, schedule a Calendly link yourself. Any way that you feel necessary to reach out to us, we would love to assist if we can. Regardless of any of that, thank you guys so much for taking any time to watch my videos, and we'll see you on the next one.